blindsided. That's how many Senate Republicans feel by Donald Trump's choice of Matt Gaetz to be Attorney General. Sources telling CNN there were audible gasps on the Hill as the announcement was popping up on people's phones. They were hearing from reporters. Here's how Republican Senator Susan Collins described how she felt when she heard the news.
I was shocked that he has been nominated. If the nomination proceeds, I'm sure that there will be an extensive background check by the FBI and public hearings and a lot of questions asked.
Republican Kevin Cramer also raising the issues very explicitly of the background check from the FBI, making it clear many perhaps feel that will block it before they have to deal with it. Manu Raju is out front live on Capitol Hill. And Manu, I mean, you have been trying to talk to Republicans tonight there. You were there witnessing those audible gasps. What are they telling you?
Yeah, it's very clear, Aaron, that this is going to be a rocky road to confirmation because a lot of Republicans are concerned about a number of things that Matt Gaetz has said or done over the years, his efforts to try to oust Kevin McCarthy as Speaker, successful efforts in leading that charge, the fact that he's facing a House ethics investigation into sexual misconduct, something that he denies, as well as his defense of Donald Trump in the aftermath of January 6th, and it really goes down the line. It does not align with a lot of the views of the Republican senators who have the votes to confirm him. Now, that doesn't mean that everyone wants to talk about it. In fact, I tried to talk to a lot of Republican senators tonight about Matt Gaetz being nominated to the post, and they made clear they were not ready to engage.
I'm having trouble.
What about Matt Gaetz?
You support him? We'll have a confirmation process.
I don't know yet. I have to think about that one.
I mean, do you have any concerns about it?
We'll see.
Do you think Matt Gaetz is confirmable?
We'll find out, won't we?
Senator Kennedy, what do you think of Matt Gaetz as Attorney General?
Happy Thanksgiving.
And several of those members are on the Senate Judiciary Committee, which of course will play the key role in deciding whether or not to advance that nomination. Some of those members, including Senators John Cornyn and Tom Tillis, both of them had concerns about, or at least would not say that they would back Gaetz' nomination. Also, the new Senate Majority Leader, the incoming Senate Majority Leader, Senator John Thune, indicating today that this would be an advise and consent process. It would go through the regular Senate process, and not saying if he believes that Gaetz could be confirmed to the post.
All right.
Aaron.
Thank you very much, Manu. Out front now, Kate Bedingfield and Shermichael Singleton. And Kate, you just heard some of the Republicans that Manu spoke to, right? They don't want to talk about it at this point when it comes to Matt Gaetz. Others, though, have been very open. So what do you think happens here? I mean, you can have a big firestorm, and then eventually people just get on board. I mean, that's what history would show is going to happen, right? That's the precedent. But here we are. Do you think this will actually be a bridge too far for enough Republicans to block a nomination?
I mean, look, time and again, we've seen Trump say or do things that we expected Senate Republicans would not fall in line behind, and they inevitably have. So I think past precedent plus the combination of Trump's, frankly, overwhelming, political victory last week suggests that ultimately, if Trump is really serious about putting muscle behind this nomination and getting it over the finish line, will it probably get there? Probably. But I think the big questions are, which we're kind of just alluded to, were, what comes up in the vet? Are there things that come up that are so appalling and unacceptable that enough Republican senators walk away? Yeah. I think the other big question here, though, is this a genuine nomination, or is this an exit ramp for Matt Gaetz to leave the House, to have the oversight, ethics investigation into him closed, which happened effectively when he resigned today? I mean, is this Trump giving him an exit ramp and a graceful exit. And I think we actually don't know the answer to that yet. So it's going to be really interesting to see how this develops.
Tommy Tuberville, one of Trump's most loyal allies in the Senate, obviously supports this. He made that clear because he had a warning for any Republican who would consider opposing the nomination. Here's what he said.
At the end of the day, President Trump was elected by an enormous vote, and he deserves a team around him that he wants. It's not us to determine that. Vote with President Trump. This is the last chance we're going to have of saving this country. And if you want to get in the way, fine. But we're going to try to get you out of the Senate, too, if you try to do that.
How serious of a threat is it, Kate?
I think it's probably pretty serious. I mean, again, I think the victory that Trump notched on Tuesday, he expressed a lot of support in, we saw his vote increase in states across the country where these senators are going to be looking in their own backyards and saying, do I really want to pick this fight with Donald Trump right out of the gate? I mean, it's such a shame that Trump chooses to surround himself with people like this who have such, appalling lapses of character and ethics. It's just unfortunate. There are many brilliant conservative minds in this country who would make qualified attorneys general. But, unfortunate that Trump's chosen to do this. I suppose it's also always possible that he throws Gates out there as kind of chum in the water. It's often true in a transition and in confirmation fights that somebody becomes the lightning rod and sort of actually makes it easier for everybody else to get confirmed.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what Trump is doing here, except I will say, Trump hates to lose. So I'm not sure if that's a strategy that he'd be trying to employ here.
I mean, look, I think if you were trying to make it easier for every other nominee to get confirmed, this was a great pick because he's going to draw all the attention, all the lightning. What is interesting is that of all days, it's today. The day when the U.S. Senate went, and the Republicans in the Senate conference went and actually selected a new majority leader. They selected John Thune. They didn't support Rick Scott, who is the MAGA favorite or MAGA Twitter favorite. So they showed that they are somewhat insular from some of the political pressures outside from kind of the vortex. Be interesting to see if they kind of keep up that sort of discipline and separation as they look towards the confirmation hearings, especially in the case of Matt Gaetz.
Yeah, we should just note for people not familiar with John Thune, he is an establishment Republican. I don't mean that as an insult. He's from South Dakota. He's the Republican whip. He was next in line.
He was next in line. He had a majority support basically walking into today, or close to majority support, and then pulled it out, which I think most observers expected, except in the last 48 hours or so, there was this real conservative pressure to try to go with Rick Scott. Clearly, the senators had their own decisions they want to make on that.
Well, now senators are going to have to decide, assuming that there is a confirmation hearing, what they think about the Matt Gaetz Attorney General nomination, to say nothing of Tulsi Gabbard for DNI, Pete Hegseth for Secretary of Defense. I think Marco Rubio, they'll probably just wave him in at this point.
All right.
What do you think?
It's already badged.
So, Lindsey Graham said, I'll have to think about that. Translation, heads are exploding in the Senate among Republicans. They do not want this. I mean, John Thune is going to stop answering his phone. Heads are also exploding at the Justice Department because this goes against the kind of candidate, Republican or Democrat, that the DOJ sees as an appropriate candidate. I think it also speaks to two things. This is Donald Trump on steroids. It's not just that he has the House and the Senate and a mandate. He feels...
And immunity from the U.S. Supreme Court, at least partial.
He feels he can do this. And when we say that Matt Gaetz is loyal to Donald Trump, the translation here is, in the position that we have said is the most sensitive cabinet position, he has put a yes man in there. There are going to be no guardrails if the Senate Republicans confirm him.
And let me just remind people at home, just because our standards are changing so much in this society so quickly. Neera Tanden, a Democratic operative and official who I think is now Secretary of the Cabinet in the Biden White House, a non-confirmable position, she was rejected for the Office of Management and Budget because she had written some snarky tweets. She had written some snarky tweets and her confirmation was sandbagged.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, that's where we are as a country. And, you're talking about someone who was under investigation by the DOJ. I think for the immigrant community, for the civil rights community, for the pro-choice community, they have to be ready for a fight with the DOJ, with the Trump administration, because so many things that those communities care about are going to be under attack. And there are no guardrails. And now Trump has someone who's going to execute whatever he wants to execute. And Matt Gaetz, say what you want about him. He's very good on television. He's a very good communicator. And that's where I think, the Trump world is really surrounding himself with people who can communicate, maybe not in the way I like, but the way in which a lot of Americans will listen. We'll see how the policies end up getting, accepted. I think he's going to have a hard time over the long term with this cast of characters that he has?
I mean, maybe not. We'll see. I mean, we'll see if the Republicans in the Senate, how they react to this.
Well, why would they? Why wouldn't they vote to confirm him? You have a president who has 34 counts of, 30 convicted of 34 felonies. I'm pretty sure the bar is so low now that anyone can get confirmed.
From journalists and Lift Our Voices co-founder Gretchen Carlson, also former federal prosecutor Jeffrey Toobin, CNN political commentators Alyssa Farr Griffin and Scott Jennings, and former Pennsylvania Republican Congressman Charlie Dent, one-time chairman of the House Ethics Committee. Jeff Toobin, surprising, not surprising?
It is surprising. But I think that what I'm reminded of today is 8 years ago when President-elect Trump picked Jeff Sessions to be his attorney general. Very conservative, very distinguished, a senator. He'd been a senator for a long time. He'd been the U.S. attorney, but he committed one sin that was unforgivable, which was he recused himself from the Russia investigation, which was absolutely the proper thing to do, deferred the case to his deputy, Rod Rosenstein, who appointed Robert Mueller. And that investigation, was an affliction for Trump. He wants an attorney general who will, under no circumstances, ever turn over anything to a special prosecutor and do his bidding and protect Trump, whose engagement with the legal system has been a constant of his entire life.
Alyssa, were you surprised by this?
I think, to your point, this is what he ran on. I think I thought he would have gone with a more subtle name, maybe somebody who's a loyalist but not quite as polarizing as Matt Gaetz. But the question now is, does the Senate, and Senate Republicans in particular, truly believe in its constitutional advise and consent role? I can think of about 4 Republican senators who I think would potentially stand up to this: a Todd Young, a Lisa Murkowski, a Susan Collins, a Bill Cassidy. There I don't think is a single Republican senator who actually thinks that this is the right choice and a qualified choice and somebody of the moral character to be attorney general. The question is the political will there? Do they want to cross Donald Trump this early in time? And if I could just tell you quickly, my really only run-in with Matt Gaetz, I don't know him personally, was in the outer Oval Office when Donald Trump was president. He was about to walk in and meet with him, and he was holding a folder. And I said, "What's in that folder?" just so I'd see what he's about to give to the President of the United States. It was conspiracy theories about Joe Scarborough murdering his intern. And he presented it to Donald Trump, who then tweeted about it, causing duress to the family of this woman who died tragically. No involvement, obviously, of Joe Scarborough. But that's the character and the judgment of this individual. House Republicans know it. Senate Republicans know it, but will the political will
that's
be
chilling
there?
if that guy is the guy who's going to be running the Department of Justice.
Just the stunning lack of judgment, character, and integrity.
And I actually do know Matt Gaetz because I worked with him on my bipartisan legislation in passing 2 laws recently. But I think the biggest story of today is that Senator John Thune is now the Senate Majority Leader. And why is that so important? Because Rick Scott is not. That would have been all wheels off the rails with MAGA. So now that responsibility is on Senator Thune to lead the troops into making good decisions up against recess appointments. Remember, Trump earlier this week said to all 3 candidates who wanted to be Senate Majority Leader, "Will you all agree to do recess appointments?" And they all said yes. So will Senator Thune now backtrack on that with a Pete Hegseth up for defense, with a Matt Gaetz up for Attorney General? The other interesting thing is the House Ethics Committee, 2 days away from releasing the report on Matt Gaetz. Then he resigns tonight. So the big question in my mind tonight is, will that Ethics Committee give that report to the Senate before the confirmation hearing?
And the point about recess appointments is that if that's the way it proceeds, there is no confirmation hearing. And the possible embarrassment of these nominees who don't really know a lot about their subject won't have to be subject to questioning.
Scott, I saw you on CNN earlier, moments after the Gaetz news broke. Even you seem surprised. Do you think this is a smart choice?
Well, smart, interesting question. I mean, I think based on what I've heard tonight, Gaetz starts out at a deficit in the Senate that would be probably difficult to overcome. Doesn't mean maybe a confirmation hearing couldn't change some minds, but it just strikes me that this is an uphill climb to get confirmed, which then puts you into this recess appointment idea, which I also think, candidly, is going to be difficult for him to do, meaning the president-elect. So I think of everything he's announced, which I don't really have a problem with anything that he's announced, this Gaetz thing strikes me as the most problematic if you're looking at it from a political and legislative affairs matter. So I am really sort of shocked by it. One question I have, and I haven't seen anyone answer it yet, is I read that Matt Gaetz resigned from the Congress effective today, but he resigned from this Congress. He just got elected to the next Congress. And I don't know exactly how that works. I mean, I assume because he just got elected to the next Congress, he's still entitled to show up and be sworn in January. Now, I have called a couple of people to find out how that would work.
It's a rather
but to
unique
me,
situation.
It is very unique because he has resigned from the current Congress, having just gotten elected to the next one. So I'm also wondering about how
Yet again,
about how that might
Donald
work.
Trump makes history.
Yes, absolutely. So there are lots of questions swirling. My general view is of the people that have been deemed controversial, I actually think Hegseth and Gabbard have more than a fighting chance of being confirmed. Gaetz is the one who I would think starts under the line and is going to have a more problematic path if it advances that far.
Congressman Dent, do you share Scott's belief that this might be, too far for enough senators, Republican senators?
Oh goodness, yes. I mean, this is a gobsmackingly bad nomination. I mean, I'd be less surprised, in the words of Chevy Chase, if my face were stapled to the floor. I mean, this is really a bad nomination, and I can't imagine any circumstance under which Matt Gaetz would be confirmed. I suspect he will Donald Trump will have to withdraw this nomination. And by the way, to answer Scott's question, if Gaetz resigned today and they decided to be sworn in the new year, then the Ethics Committee could still release that report. They have the report. And by the way, I'm sure that's the reason why he resigned. They're probably about to drop sanctions on him, and these reports are pretty darn ugly.
And because he resigned, they wouldn't release the report anyway?
Well, the House loses jurisdiction over any member once that member is no longer serving. But I'm curious to see if the Ethics Committee might release it anyway. And I say that because this investigation was unusual in that the Ethics Committee several months ago announced what specifically they were investigating and not investigating about Matt Gaetz. They never talk about an ongoing investigation because he antagonized them. So I am just curious to see if they might release it anyway. I don't think it's ever been done before, but this is kind of unprecedented.
Scott?
Anderson, one thing about this appointment and some of the other appointments, Donald Trump feels he's feeling his oats. I mean, he's feeling powerful. He's feeling decisive.
Sure.
He doesn't. Yeah, I mean, he doesn't feel like he owes anybody anything. He obviously doesn't feel like he needs to negotiate any of these things, even with the Senate that has to confirm them. I mean, this is a guy who's feeling fully powerful as the president-elect, and certainly within the Republican Party. And so, if this is an attempt to provoke a showdown, who is going to actually run this party, and will you let me do it? It sets up a very, very interesting showdown over a very controversial subject matter. Now, again, we'll see how this all plays out. I have the feeling, the sensation that something else is afoot here. But that to me is Trump is signaling to Washington D.C. I'm not running again. I'm beholden to no one. I'm not beholden to the Congress. I'm not beholden to the Republican Party. And so I'm going to do what I want to do. And I'm not negotiating my hardcore positions with anybody.
Out front now, Democratic Congressman Eric Swalwell, who sits on the House Judiciary Committee. So, of course, Attorney General going to be crucial for what you'll be doing over the next couple of years. So here we are. What do you think?
Well, to the president, I say, no, seriously, who is your pick for Attorney General? Because this pick is a middle finger to Democrats and sane Republicans. And it's not being panned only by Democrats, Aaron. My Republican friends in the House are also clowning this pick. They're saying it publicly, as you just read off, but they're also saying it privately. And that was the mood earlier at the Capitol. And so, Donald Trump, not known for having a sense of humor, credit to you, you landed a good joke on the country. But this is a position, considering what it oversees: counterterrorism, money laundering, public corruption, child trafficking. It's worthy of being taken seriously. And also should tell you everything about Matt Gaetz, that he would allow himself to be used by the president to try and own the libs with something that we know is never going to pass in the Senate.
Well, okay, can I just ask you about that? Are you sure about that?
Yeah, I'm sure. And I say that because you still have in the Senate, by the way, at least 3 individuals who, on the Republican side, who voted to convict Donald Trump. So you still have Senators Cassidy, Murkowski, and Collins. You have Senator Tillis in North Carolina, who just saw his state become a little bit bluer, although Kamala Harris did not win there. We elected a statewide governor and attorney general, and the former governor, Roy Cooper, may be running against him. So you have at least 4 reasonable people who are not, I don't think, going to be inclined to move on this. And then John Thune just beat Donald Trump's choice to be majority leader of the Senate. Everyone from the Trump camp was projecting this week that they wanted Rick Scott, and John Thune creamed Rick Scott. So I just don't see this
And that
happening.
happened under
I don't
secret
think
ballot,
Democrats
which is,
have to,
the irony of that under secret ballot, Republicans
True.
chose the candidate that Trump did not want. I hope the irony is not lost on anyone there. But, okay, you say what you say about John Thune, but Trump has said that he wants whoever is the majority leader, and now, of course, that's John Thune. It's unclear what John Thune will do, but Trump wants to basically, anybody that he nominates can be appointed during recess. So in other words, the Senate doesn't even get a vote. So John Thune has to take him on directly on that. Do you really think he's going to do that? Is essentially what would be the first thing he does?
I believe that Senators Murkowski, Collins, Cassidy, Tillis, and of course the Democrats are going to put pressure on him not to do that. The American people also are not going to be quiet about this. But I would just suggest to you, as disturbing as this is, Matt Gaetz may be a lapdog for the president, but that doesn't mean we as Democrats in Congress have to chase every ball that the president throws. I think in a way, again, this is just trying to fire us up, spin us up. It's the beginning of a negotiation for the president. I've been dealing with this guy for 9 years on the Judiciary, Intelligence, Homeland Security Committee. I've seen this move before, and I have confidence in the way that this is going to work out.
All right. Well, Congressman Swalwell, I appreciate your time, and thank you very much. Yeah. All right. And joining us now, New York Times reporter Stead Herndon and Mark Caputo, national political reporter for The Bulwark. And I appreciate both of you being here. So, Mark, I know you have some new reporting on Trump's thinking behind this pick, and interesting, you heard the congressman's point of view on it. You just spoke with a Trump advisor, though, just a couple of moments ago. What'd you learn?
Well, I'd say I think Eric Swalwell, with all due respect to him, is as wrong as 2 left shoes. This is not a negotiation. Donald Trump is serious about this. Mm-hmm. Both Donald Trump and Matt Gaetz feel aggrieved by the Justice Department. And Gaetz has been a longtime advisor, well tested by fire in the president's eyes, well trusted by the president or the president-elect. And if he gets in that office, you can rest assured, according to Trump's advisors and the people who are familiar with his thinking, that Matt Gaetz is going to investigate the investigators, both those who investigated him and those who investigated former President Trump. So this is a serious thing that they're doing. And in their minds, it doesn't really matter if the Democrats don't like this. What matters to them is that they have the votes in the Senate. Now, it should be pointed out that there is this sort of new procedure, a new move to allow for recess appointments that John Thune, now the Senate Republican leader, has basically agreed to. And Matt Gaetz was among those who helped sort of formulate that plan and policy with former President Trump to get Thune to do that. And so if he doesn't get confirmed, you could possibly see a recess appointment made of Matt Gaetz by former President Trump or President Trump at the time. So I don't think this is a negotiation. There's really no indication that there is.
And if Thune, does, as you say, goes ahead with those recess appointments, here we are. I mean, instead, what are you hearing?
Yeah, similar to Mark, I think that this is a pick that should be taken seriously, at least because the Trump advisors are serious themselves. And I think we should also see this as Trump following through on a campaign promise. He promised vengeance. He promised revenge. He made clear that this would be a second term in which retribution would be part of the ideology. And that's what this pick represents. I was in the audience at CPAC when Matt Gaetz made
that comment about get rid of every single government institution.
DOJ, FBI. There was rabid applause in the crowd. This has been something that the kind of MAGA ecosystem has talked about as a means of getting payback for what they feel happened to Donald Trump. And I would just say, I don't think there's any indication that we should assume that Republican senators won't go along with this or that the recess appointment kind of switch that Mark is talking about won't allow this pick to come through. I'm of the belief that because of the way the results went, there is so much, there's so much of a sense that Donald Trump has a mandate to govern as he wishes that I think that there's going to be an interest. This is going to be the first test of how much the Republican Congress is willing to push back on it.
And he wants that test right away. I mean, now, Mark, I was sharing what a lot of Republicans said, more than Democrats, because obviously, it's now Trump's party, and they obviously had a broad-based discuss for this. Now, Elon Musk has spoken out about Gates as Attorney General. He posts the hammer of justice is coming, a clear endorsement for the whole idea. So in all the reporting, Mark, that you've been doing on Musk's influence on Trump, on his role, say, in a decision like this with Matt Gaetz, how much did he push Gaetz for AG?
Oh, I don't think he had to. I think this was Gaetz from the get-go. One of the advisors I spoke to for President Trump had said that all the other people who wanted to be AG talked about it as if it was some sort of judicial appointment, right? And they talked, and I'm censoring myself because there's some F-bombs and the like, but they talked in these high-minded ways about the Constitution and the like. And it was Gaetz who said, yeah, I'll go in there and I'll cut some effing heads. And that's what's appealing to Donald Trump. Not only is Gaetz willing to do it, not only is he able to do it, he has a certain zeal to do it. And he's demonstrated his ability to be loyal to Trump and to be able to sort of prosecute his agenda. And that's what you're going to see.
So, Stead, last night, Pete Hegseth, the news broke on that. Yeah. And there were some who thought, okay, well, that's the one that won't pass muster. To your point, with recess appointments, all of them would, but that's the one. Then Tulsi Gabbard comes out. Yeah. And you have a lot of very serious Republicans who have an incredibly serious problem with Tulsi Gabbard. Again, just pretend Democrats don't matter. Then you get Matt Gaetz. So all three of those then presumably are all real. And in the world that we're talking about with, say, a recess appointment, all three of them will get their nominations.
I don't think it's a sure yes, but I don't think we can act like it's a sure no.
Right.
And I definitely think that we should, I think this is us recognizing that Donald Trump was clear as day about how he intended to govern, and he plans to follow through on that promises. And so it's going to be interesting how Democrats play this, how Republicans play this too, because will they try to kind of fend off the worst of these, maybe Matt Gaetz, because maybe that position has more power, and let other ones through, or are they going to try to fight them on all fronts? I think this is also a test of some of the resistance energy that was very different in 2016-17. You had an immediate reaction after Trump's win, and Democrats very enthusiastic, pressuring others to push back on every single thing. There hasn't been that grassroots energy there this time either. So will the electorate speak out on this? I mean, one question I have is for the voting public who put Donald Trump back in office, was that a rejection of Biden and the status quo, or was that an endorsement of the MAGA agenda, of the Gaetz as Attorney General? I don't think we really know that yet, but these type of appointments will give us clues on that front based on the reaction we see from the electorate.
Right, that's going to be crucial, right? With the people who voted
the
for inflation,
feel pressure?
housing prices,
exactly.
This is maybe not what they signed up for.
Because if they don't hear that stuff coming from the public, I don't think you'll see Republican senators go out of their way to oppose Donald Trump.
All right. Well, Stead, thank you. Mark, thank you. Great to have you both in all of your reporting.